January 14th, 2022. Somewhere in the United States, a living room. A man is sitting at a laptop. Outside, an ordinary Tuesday night. Inside, the internet of an entire country is about to go dark. 28 domains. That is the entire publicly accessible internet of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. A country of 25 million people, connected to the rest of the world through a single cable running into northeastern China. In approximately 11 minutes, that cable will stop carrying data. He is not an intelligence officer. He is not acting under government orders. No agency has authorized what he is about to do. His name is Alejandro Caceres. The world knows him as P4X, and he has just decided to go to war. To understand what made this possible, you need to understand who P4X is, and you need to understand one specific year in his life. Caceres was a cybersecurity researcher. He spent his career finding vulnerabilities, holes in systems that shouldn't be there, and reporting them to the people responsible for fixing them. He was the kind of person that security depends on: patient, methodical, working quietly, usually without credit. In early 2021, North Korean government hackers targeted him directly. They got in. For months they were inside his system, reading his research, mapping his methods, taking what they needed. He discovered the intrusion. He documented everything: the malware samples, the attack methodology, the infrastructure it connected to. He packaged it precisely, the way a professional does. Then he sent it to the FBI and to CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. The institutions built exactly for this. For 11 months, nobody called back. He was not an angry man, by his own account. He kept filing things properly, kept waiting. He mentioned later, in the one interview he ever gave, that part of what kept him patient was the belief that the system would eventually work, that it was built to handle exactly this. 11 months of silence taught him otherwise. When North Korea's internet went dark in January 2022, the first assumption, the obvious assumption, was that the US government had done it, that the NSA had finally retaliated, that Cyber Command had run an authorized operation, that the institutional response to years of North Korean cyber warfare had arrived. But here's what nobody knew yet. The NSA had nothing to do with it. Neither did Cyber Command. No classified operation. No presidential authority. No interagency coordination. No budget line. It was one person, working from a living room, who decided that if the government wouldn't act, he would. And here is what makes that possible: the specific fact that changes everything about this story. North Korea built its cyber capabilities for offense, entirely for offense. The assumption was that no one with the resources to attack them would bother. The assumption was wrong. If you're finding this story as unbelievable as I did, hit subscribe. We cover the files that were buried, classified, or deliberately forgotten. New file every week. Now back to the story. North Korea's offensive cyber capability is substantial by any measure. Bureau 121. The regime's primary hacking unit operates an estimated 6,000 personnel across facilities in Pyongyang and in cover positions in China, Russia, and elsewhere. Their annual theft from international financial institutions runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars. They hit Bangladesh's central bank in 2016 and walked away with $81 million. They deployed WannaCry in 2017, a ransomware attack that hit hospitals, governments, and corporations across 150 countries, causing damage estimated at $4 billion globally. 6,000 operatives, state infrastructure, diplomatic cover, decades of accumulated intelligence on their targets. Against this, one man, one laptop, and 11 months of preparation he did not waste. So how does one person attack an entire country's internet? That's exactly what we're going to find out. To take down North Korea's external internet infrastructure, Caceres needed 3 things. First, a complete map of every publicly accessible North Korean server and domain, every point of exposure. Second, working exploits for the known vulnerabilities in that infrastructure, built and tested without institutional resources. Third, the means to sustain the attack long enough and broadly enough that it could not be written off as a technical glitch. He had 11 months to prepare. He started with step 1. Most countries have layered internet infrastructure. Thousands of service providers, millions of individual servers, redundant routing across multiple physical paths. If one node goes down, traffic reroutes around it automatically. The system absorbs damage the way a healthy body absorbs an injury. North Korea's external internet does none of this. 28 registered domains. All traffic routed through a single physical connection, an undersea cable operated by a Chinese state telecom provider, China Unicom, entering the peninsula at a single border crossing near the Tumen River. Every byte of North Korean government internet traffic flows through that one point. It is, by modern standards, almost incomprehensibly minimal. But minimal is not the same as secure. Every one of those 28 domains was running publicly accessible servers. And every one of those servers was running software with known, documented, unpatched vulnerabilities, the kind that sit in public security databases for years because the organizations responsible for fixing them never do. Cáceres had been finding vulnerabilities like these professionally for years. North Korea had given him a target that was, in technical terms, almost embarrassingly exposed. The obstacle was not capability. It was scale. Denial of service attacks the technique he would use work by flooding a target system with so many fake requests that it cannot respond to legitimate ones. The servers choke. The routing tables overflow. Traffic stops. The target goes offline. Running that kind of attack against a single server requires modest resources. Running it against an entire country's internet infrastructure, simultaneously, and sustaining it long enough to matter that normally requires institutional infrastructure, coordinated botnets, server farms, operational teams. Cáceres had none of that. What he had was technical skill accumulated over a career and 11 months to build the tools he needed from scratch. He built custom tools. He sourced computing resources through legitimate cloud providers, distributed enough that no single provider would notice unusual activity until the operation was already underway. The preparation took most of those 11 months. The attack itself took minutes to initiate. Starting in the second week of January 2022, Cáceres ran sustained denial of service attacks against North Korean internet infrastructure. All 28 domains, simultaneously. North Korea's external internet went down. Then it came back up, partially, as some servers recovered. Then it went down again. This cycle repeated over weeks, not hours, weeks. Network monitoring firms noticed the outages. Dyn Research documented them. The pattern was unusual, not random technical failure, not a weather event, not infrastructure maintenance, targeted, repeated, deliberate. The working assumption, almost universally, was that a government had done it, the NSA, Cyber Command. A classified retaliatory operation that would never be officially acknowledged. The scale required it to be institutional. That was the reasoning. The reasoning was wrong by exactly one person. In February 2022, journalist Andy Greenberg at Wired received an encrypted message from a source who wanted to talk. The source would not appear on camera, would not confirm their location, would not give their legal name. They wanted to explain what had happened to North Korea's internet. They used the name P4X. What followed was the only public account Cáceres has ever given of what he did and why. He said, "I want them to understand that if you come at us, it means some of your infrastructure is going to go down for a while." He said he felt he had no choice, that he had done everything correctly, reported through proper channels, provided complete documentation, cooperated fully with every government request, and been met with silence. Not a rejection, not a denial, silence. He said the silence told him something specific, that individual cybersecurity researchers who get targeted by nation-states are not considered a priority worth responding to, that the institutional framework treats the attack as a data point and the victim as a resource, not a person with a legitimate claim on protection. He said he was making a point, not just to North Korea. He also said something that the security community noted carefully, and that has not been widely discussed since. He said he was not the only person capable of doing this, that the barrier was significantly lower than governments wanted to acknowledge, that there were other researchers, people with his level of skill, people who had been targeted and ignored who were having the same conversation he was having with himself. After the Wired article published in February 2022, the U.S. government did not charge Alejandro Cáceres. Attacking foreign computer infrastructure without authorization is a federal crime under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The target being North Korea does not change the law. The provocation of the original North Korean attack does not change the law. The government's failure to respond does not change the law. The law is clear. It was broken. No charges were filed. Legal analysts offered several possible explanations. Prosecution would require the government to acknowledge, in a public trial, that a private citizen had conducted a sustained operation against a foreign nation-state's internet infrastructure, while the NSA, Cyber Command, and every relevant federal agency had done nothing about the underlying attack that motivated him. A jury would hear that. A jury would have questions. No official explanation was offered. In the weeks after the article, other hackers contacted Lazarus, dozens of them, researchers who had been hit by state-sponsored attacks and received the same non-response. He began talking about something more formal, a collective, a coordinated capability, people with skills and grievances and no institutional outlet for either. He called the concept SiegeSec. The name is a reference to siegecraft, the systematic dismantling of fortifications from the outside, methodically, without a standing army. The government said nothing about that either. Lazarus was careful, in the Wired interview, not to present what he had done as heroic. He said he knew it was illegal. He said he had thought about that for a long time before acting. He said he had made a calculation about costs, the legal risk to himself against what it would mean to do nothing. He did not dress this up. What he kept returning to, what the Wired interview kept coming back to, was the asymmetry of the original situation. North Korean government operatives had infiltrated the system of a private American citizen, monitored his work for months, and extracted his research using tools and techniques developed at state expense under official protection. He had reported it correctly. He had done everything the system asked of him, and the system had, in the most specific possible sense, not shown up. He said it felt like self-defense. He said he understood that legally it wasn't. When those other researchers heard what he had done when the Wired article circulated through security communities, the response was not condemnation. It was something more uncomfortable. Identification. The P4X operation was, on one level, a story about one person's decision. On another level, it was a demonstration. The systems that underpin modern states, the internet infrastructure, the financial networks, the communications grids were designed in an era when only states had the resources to attack them seriously. That is no longer true, has not been true for years. The tools exist, the knowledge is publicly documented. The computing resources required are available for hire by the hour through services that ask no questions. What changed is that the barrier is no longer the technology. The barrier is motive and skill. Lazarus had both. The question that P4X raised and that no government has answered formally is structural. If states are willing to use cyber attacks against private individuals as routine tools of intelligence gathering, and those individuals have no effective legal protection, and some of them have the technical capability to respond, what framework governs what happens next? The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was written in 1986. The internet it was designed to protect did not yet exist in its current form. North Korea's Bureau 121 did not exist. The tools Lazarus used to attack an entire country's infrastructure from a laptop in a living room did not exist. The law has not been substantially updated. The gap between the threat landscape and the legal framework for responding to it has grown every year. Lazarus did not create that gap. He just made it impossible to ignore, briefly, before everyone moved on. North Korea's internet came back up. It always does. Bureau 121 is still operating. Their financial theft operations continue. Their ransomware campaigns continue. Their intelligence collection against private individuals continues. In February 2022, Wired asked Lazarus if he planned to continue. He said, "I think I'm going to be doing this for a while." The government still hasn't called back. Subscribe for the next file. It drops next week.